Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do a special episode that deals with my ideas or my parallel ideas for the reaction to the Board Game Geek Golden Geek Awards that were given out early last week. As well as what many of you know, Board Game Geek is a very central website. It's the grand central station of the board gaming community and the internet. And it has routinely over the past 14 years done awards for best of in the previous year. They usually wait a few months, that's why it's May, in order that people who get games at the end of the year can have time to fully flesh out their opinions of them as they play them into 2020. This year was not entirely typical or atypical of the awards that they were given, and I have promised myself that I do not do awards at the end of the year because I will do the lists, but then by the time I'm ready to publish them, as I've explained in videos previous, everybody's got an opinion. It just doesn't seem to be a value add. I don't think I'm breaking my rule this time because I'm instead responding to the to the most trafficked websites version of what was best for 2019, and I'm not making any critiques or criticisms. I would do it differently personally in certain ways, but I'm not going to worry about that. Instead, I'm going to give you alternatives to the awards they gave that are either equal to or, in my mind, maybe a little more precise for the category for the games in general that won awards. Let's get rolling. I will go in reverse order from what Board Game Geek had so that we can get to Board Game of the Year last. Okay, we're looking at Board Game App. Now, Board Game Geek gave the award to Through the Ages, Leaders and Wonders. And I think that's a valid point. I think it's a good digital translation, and I'm all for it. I gave the edge in my personal ranking to Raiders of the North Sea, which I thought was a very polished, very well done recreation of Raiders of the North Sea, the board game. Either one of those is a win-win. There are several other board games apps that did well, but I think Raiders of the North Sea excelled in both polish and usability. War game. Board Game Geek gave it to Undaunted Normandy. I would not personally agree with that, but it's okay. I mean, once again, these are popular votes. Anybody who has at least a certain amount of Geek Gold can contribute to voting in the awards. The Geek Gold requirement is to avoid people making like hundreds of accounts and then just trying to like auto vote. You have to have a certain amount of Geek Gold to be able to do it. I think it's fair for kind of weeding out people trying to game the system. Undaunted Normandy is a really good game in my opinion. As the war game category, I would say that I personally always look for games that fit into the more conventional historical understanding of war games and what comes into your mind when war game is mentioned. And for that, there are a host of good opportunities from 2019, a rich target of opportunity. I ended up picking Red Storm Air War over Europe, which I mentioned in my last video because it happened to start with the letter R, and I was on the letter R for Alphabet Soup. I'm not going to belabor the point other than to say it's an excellent game. If you feel like you want to recreate that 80s Cold War tension over the skies of central Germany, really well done. Thematic, Board Game Geek gave this award to Dune, which I think is fair. I think it no issues at all. I think that's a fair thing. I haven't played Dune a ton, but I played it enough to go, meh. Totally see it. I gave the award to a little-known title called Wingspan. Wingspan is about birds and birding and collecting eggs and basically utilizing an army of birds, so to speak, to score righteous victory points. It is really well done and really fits the theme. Yeah, thematically, I think it makes perfect sense. Now, I love birds, so don't get me wrong. You're going to hear this word a lot because bird is the word. I love birds. I watch The Big Year every year at December 31st. Great movie, one of my favorites. Every year, watch it, same time, same place. I also read a lot of books on birding. There are great books that have been recommended to me on birding that just recently were given to me that I absolutely thought were just amazing. The community of birders, so definitely a fan in that regard. Strategy, Board Game Geek gave the award to Wingspan. I look for more strategy. My bar is a little bit higher as far as what is a strategy game versus games that have strategy. Sure, and anytime you have a game and you have thought process and decision making, you have to decide this level of strategy. To me, a strategy game kind of fits more into a mold of something where you really have to make a lot more deep decisions in a strategic way. No big deal. I chose On Mars from Vital Lacerda, and I think that might be one that someone that looks for not necessarily a war game, but a game of like building up on Mars. There's a timing element, there's a spatial element, everything fits together. Anyone who knows Vital Lacerda games knows he gives you 2 or 3 choices, and those explode into about 10 or 15 different sub-choices and actions, and the wheels keep spinning on the game. On Mars was definitely my top strategy game of 2019. Solo, Board Game Geek gave the award to Wingspan. Can't necessarily agree with that. I look for solo games. First off, I look primarily for games that are primarily, or at least predominantly, solo in their intent and nature. And for that, there were plenty to choose from already. Peloponnesian War by Mark Herman is the one I chose the best. It gives you a literal opportunity to play both sides of a war, which is strange because usually you want to pick one side and like be allied to it. This is different because you are picking both sides. The idea is to end the war as quickly as possible, resolve it as quickly as possible. So whatever side is lagging behind by too far, you're picking up the slack and trying to like go back and forth. You do have to step away from yourself and go, I'm sort of like on the God view looking down, trying to manipulate left, right, doesn't matter. But I think it did a tremendous, as far as solo games go, it is unique. I would almost say it's innovative in a lot of ways, incredibly innovative. Party game. Board Game Geek chose Wavelength. Wavelength is wacky, wild, and funny. Fair enough. I chose Wavelength, yes. I think for party games, which I don't admittedly delve into too often, I think that was a perfectly fair choice, and I would agree that's worth checking out for people who like to party with cardboard. Innovative. Board Game Geek gave the award to a little-known birding game called Wingspan. I tend to look for games that do things I've never seen before. I love games that put things I've seen before together in a nice way or in a unique way. Totally cool with that. But for me, innovation means, whoa, I wouldn't have thought of that. And nothing in, say, Wingspan does. However, there are quite a few unique. Peloponnesian War could have easily won innovation because of its pick both sides. And so I chose Nevsky. Nevsky is, and I play a lot of different hex and counter games, war games, simulations, coin games, you name it. Nevsky is the first one that really puts together the building up units, feeding them, foraging, finding your way. It's like no other game you've seen. It kind of fits right in the middle between, tactical Memoir 44 and high-level strategy like Unconditional Surrender. In the middle is this opportunity to have kind of the best of both worlds put in, but it's part of this new system where you're levying troops. You have to keep them around for a certain amount of time, and so time becomes an issue. You have to feed them, you have to take care of all that stuff, which seems like it's mundane, but it's not, because you're also trying to use that against the actual traveling of your units to places strategically. It's not just castle, like I roll 4 dice and your castle's toast. You're sieging. There's so many little pieces of it that really haven't been done before to me in the way that I've seen. And so Nevsky definitely gets the innovation a nod from me. Something to check out if you're looking for something innovative from last year. Family game. Board Game Geek gave the award to a little-known bird game called Wingspan. I actually picked Llama. Now, I know Llama is really simple. So simple that I can see it being like laughed away for any families that are like, we play more than this. But for some reason, I have found such joy because A, I can teach it in 20 seconds. B, there's a risk-reward element that's really kind of clever, despite being bone dead simple. And it's llamas. It's not going to shake your world. It's not going to change the way you think about gamings. But as a family game that you can pull out and play and just get people rolling, and maybe even rolling into something more complex right afterwards, Yeah, because from llama, we usually go from llama to grim forest, which is another one that's a little more to it, but another one, and then on to other things. So expansion. Board Game Geek gave it to a little-known birding game called Wingspan, which added more content. Uh, yeah, I actually found an even smaller box that also had pretty much only content, but really opened up the opportunity for expansions, and that was Dungeon Alliance Champions. Little box about this size, and yet it comes chock full with extra characters, units, missions, etc., just in this teeny tiny box. Yeah, and there were other good expansions as well. I could even argue that, I mean, the Wingspan expansion, it's okay. It's not going to shake your world. It's not going to make you go, I cannot play without this. Dungeon Alliance Champions, I wouldn't play without it anymore. Co-op game. Board Game Geek chose a little-known game called, actually, The Crew. They broke away from their tradition, and I think Crew is fine as a co-op game. I think it's a clever take on, trick-taking game. I think I could find people to play it and enjoy it in the same vein that I would other games like Tournament at Camelot, etc. I chose Horrified because I think as far as co-ops go, Horrified is not innovative in any regard. It's not earth-shattering, or it doesn't invite new rules or new ways to play. It just takes the cooperative aspect of many games and turns it into something really cool. It takes all those pieces, creates very unique monsters you have to fight against. It takes very different, not that different, but somewhat different approach to basically being a cooperative game where people can't just manhandle you and tell you how to min-max your way to freedom. It's gloriously thematic. It's definitely, it sets the mood that you're in this old-time monster movie flick. You're rescuing people, they give you special abilities and use those. It just really took co-op games and made them fun for me, because I don't generally like co-op games that much. And so definitely have to give the nod to Horrified on this one. Can't think of a better one last year. Card game of the year, they went with a little thing called Wingspan, and I actually didn't, because I looked for games that are very predominantly a card game, and yet what did I end up with? Undaunted Normandy. Yes, it is a card game. Yes, there are tiles, and yes, you're moving. So technically speaking, I could totally see the argument that it really doesn't like puristically fit into card game. If I had to choose a game that only had cards that I would choose as a card game, it would be The Crew. But I do feel Undaunted Normandy deserves its place in its rightful place as a very entertaining Memoir 44 with a little step up and a little step sideways and a little step down game where you're basically going on missions and you're trying to fight across the beaches of Normandy using clever card play. So artwork wise, they gave it to a little-known card game about birds called Wingspan. I actually instead chose to give it to a little-known card game called Wingspan. I agree that the artwork in this is unique. There's so many different birds that are represented so pristinely and exquisitely that I can't help but just love the artwork. Sometimes I pull it out and just cycle through the birds. There'll be my window out there. Sometimes I'll see a bird I don't recognize, and I just kind of like rifle through just in case. I'm like, I can recognize it. So that's usually the sign that it's pretty good artwork if I keep going back to looking at it. And then finally, two-player game. Mine was Board Game Geek chose Watergate, not to be confused with Wingspan, the game about birds, which I haven't played yet, so I have no idea. So they could be very, very right. I've heard great things about it. I suspect it's as good as advertised. I actually went with Clask. Now, I know Clask has been around for a long time. I was only introduced to it in 2019. It's my exception to the rule about trying to keep games in the middle. But if you haven't played Clask as a two-player game, I think you're missing out. So simple, so easy. It's magnets and shuffleboard, and yet somehow we have a blast, and I can get anybody to play it. I can get anybody to play it, and they'll want to play again. It's the Prinkles of two-player games. And finally, we come to Board Game of the Year, the big one, the big kahuna, the one with the seal that'll go on boxes being shipped to people everywhere. And what did Board Game Geek do? They picked a little-known board game called Wingspan, and kudos, totally could see that. You look all together and you say, what game did I have the most fun with? I could see Wingspan being in the mix, and I would definitely not dissuade anyone from giving it a shot. Like I said, I'm a big birder, or I'm a big advocate of birders. Someday I might even go and spend a year doing a little year looking for birds. I chose a game that I think did the most amazing job of impressing me, and there were quite a few that did, and it's Tank Duel. Tank Duel has no map, no boards, no pieces, no units. It's all run through clever card play, placards, and just really well done mission design. If you want to feel like you're in a tank duel, and you don't need a huge 30-page book of rules, and you want yet the feeling that you really are in a tank. And I didn't think it was possible, as my review said. I didn't think it was possible to actually have a tank duel game without any actual spatial representation of tanks on a board. It did it. I am so looking forward to the expansion pack coming later this year or next year, more tank packs. Yeah, it took an amazing amount of polish, refinement, reduction, and yet building up just the right pieces and just the right tension and just the right system to feel like you're in a tank duel in your mind, and it works well. So that's it. Once again, this is not a Board Game Geek is wrong, Harebrained Games is right. Mostly it's just I feel compelled to at least offer alternatives for folks who might not think Wingspan is great in 9 different categories, 7 different categories, but that there are other games that I think fit the bill equally or better in those categories. So the big thing is just enjoying games, having fun, and appreciate the fact that we get to actually have the leisure time to play them. So take care, everyone. I hope you have a great time, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.